Let's talk about shotgun shells. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Will, and today I want to talk to you guys about different types of shotgun shells. This video is mostly for newer gun owners out there, just kind of an educational thing, because when you first get into guns, unless you have been around people that have been into guns your whole life, you probably don't realize that there are a lot of different types of projectiles that come out of different guns. And shotguns have a huge variety of different shells, if you will, that have different payloads and different capabilities and things. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about that and give you my thoughts. Disclaimer, I don't have every single type of shell that there is for shotguns in front of me. I don't know that anybody in the world has one of every type of shotgun shell, just because there's such a huge variety. But I do have kind of the more standard ones that you'll run across on the shelves at the stores, when you can find it on the shelves at the stores. So we'll just start out at the bottom and we'll talk about Birdshot. I have two different types of Birdshot here, and one of them is just kind of your standard cheapo Walmart ammo. You can see it's got an aluminum base there, and it's what we call low base or low brass, versus this Federal shell here, which I also got at Walmart, but this is more of like a hunting type load, and you can see it's got a higher base made out of brass. Now, what is Birdshot for? I'll roll in a picture of what Birdshot actually looks like here real quick so you guys can get an idea of how big it is. There's multiple different sizes of Birdshot. You can get number 8, number 7, number 7.5, number 4. There's a bunch of different sizes of Birdshot, and basically the smaller the number as far as the size of the shot, the bigger the actual pellets are, which means you have fewer of them in there, but they're bigger. They're going to carry more energy and go further. Birdshot can be used for a lot of different things. You can use it for practice with your shotgun. You can use it for bird hunting, shooting clays, a lot of recreational stuff. It has been used for self-defense, and it can work for self-defense, but it would not be my first recommendation. I actually have a video on the channel of me shooting multiple different types of shotgun shells out of a couple of my shotguns and patterning them at, I think it was 10 yards. I don't remember how far it was. But just to give you guys an idea of how a shotgun will tend to pattern different kinds of loads. You guys can go watch that. I'll have it linked in the description, or I'll put a card up here or something like that. But Birdshot wouldn't be my first recommendation for self-defense or home defense for a lot of reasons. One, you're going to have a much more limited range in terms of being able to cause damage. If you're within 5 feet of somebody, maybe 10 feet, something like that, yeah, I mean, it's definitely deadly. I wouldn't want to be shot at with Birdshot at 50 yards, much less 5 or 10 feet. But you're not going to have as good of a penetration into any kind of fleshy material. You're also just not going to have as tight of a pattern. It's going to spread out more, which means you have the potential for those pellets to hit something you don't want them to hit. Birdshot's just not typically powerful enough in my book to be a defensive option. Now, that being said, when I lived in an apartment years ago as a single dude, I kept my shotguns loaded with Birdshot for home defense. And the reason is, apartment, thin walls, thin ceiling, I had neighbors around me. I figured I would rather take the chance of not stopping the threat with one shot versus having Buckshot or something go through and hurt one of my neighbors, and then I have to deal with that for the rest of my life. So that was a decision that I made, but I knew what I was getting into when I made it. That being said, people have been killed with Birdshot in defensive situations, so it's not like it can't do the job, it's just not optimal. Next, we'll move on to some Buckshot. Now, I have a couple of different shells here, and I'll show you guys, I'll roll in some footage or a picture of what Buckshot looks like. They're bigger pellets. And just like with Birdshot, you have multiple sizes of Buckshot. You can have number 4 buck, which is what I have here. They are smaller pellets than your standard, like double aught, which we'll get to here in a second, but you get more of them in here. Number 4 tends to be a pretty good load for home defense. However, it's, at least this particular round out of my shotguns, doesn't pattern as tightly as I would like. But then you can go to number 3, number 2, number 1. You have 0, or aught, I guess, double aught and triple aught buck. that you can get into as well. And again, the smaller the number or the more zeros, the bigger the pellet that you have in there, which means you have fewer of them. This one happens to be a 3-inch double-aught buck. It's from Federal, and it's actually got 15 pellets in it. And you can see, if I line it up right, it is just a little bit longer than your standard 2 3/4 inch shells, which is what is most common. If you're going to get a 3-inch shell for self-defense, or for any use for that matter, make sure your shotgun has a 3-inch or 3.5-inch chamber. It'll say it on the barrel what it's chambered for. Don't try to put a 3-inch shell into a gun that's only for 2 3/4. It won't end well. That being said, Buckshot is probably the most common shotgun defensive or offensive round out there. The military uses double-aught buck in their shotguns, and yes, the military does use shotguns for certain things. And a lot of people, just in general across America, keep their shotguns loaded with buckshot because it's intended to kill larger game. I mean, that's where it came from. It's buckshot, shooting a buck with a shotgun, buck being a deer. So if it can, if it's designed and intended to hunt animals of that size, then yes, it is also going to be effective for self-defense against a person or people. It's just the way it is. And self-defense is a good thing. So I'm glad we have options like this. But other than that, that's really about it, guys. Difference between birdshot and buckshot. Now let's move on to something else. All right, so this is a slug. This is a standard, if it'll focus, there we go. Standard rifled 1-ounce slug. So rather than having multiple projectiles come out of the shotgun, when you fire this, you've got one big bullet, essentially, that's coming out of the barrel. This is useful for hunting. It's useful for self-defense. It's going to give you more accuracy at a greater distance than buckshot or birdshot will. It's also going to give you more penetrating power than either of those, as in getting through barriers and things like that. This would be good for self-defense, but you have to keep in mind that this thing is going to go through a lot more barriers, like walls and stuff, than buckshot will. So you have a higher chance of over-penetrating, going through your house and your neighbor's house, something like that, with a slug. So you have to keep that in mind when you're making your decision if you choose to use a shotgun for home defense. What's your situation? If you live on 100 acres and there's no houses anywhere near you, it's just your house, then maybe having a slug isn't such a problem, and you want that extra power, that extra accuracy and distance potentially. Okay, cool. If you live in a more neighborhood type environment like I do, I wouldn't keep a shotgun loaded with this for self-defense. But those are the 3 most common types of shotgun shells out there. But there are others, like I mentioned earlier. There are some specialty rounds like Dragon's Breath. You can get some less lethal shotgun shell rounds, like with rubber balls and things like that. There's all kinds of crazy stuff people can do with shotgun shells, and I am by no means the expert on all those specialty rounds. Also, real quick, just want to point out so you guys notice, the slug and the buckshot shells all have that high base we talked about earlier too, as opposed to the cheaper ammo's low base. But I do have one specialty type shell that I wanted to talk about, and that's this cute little guy. This is an Aguila mini shell. This one's a buckshot round, but you can also get them in mini slugs. So they're just tiny little guys. And the big advantage to these is that with a tube-fed shotgun, this takes up obviously less room than a standard shell. So you can load more of these in there, and you have a higher capacity. With shotguns, that's kind of a big deal. Downside to these is, well, there's a few of them. One, not every shotgun will run these reliably, and even some that will, you kind of need an adapter for them, like the Mossberg 500 and 590. They'll run them, but you need an adapter. The the Remingtons, as far as I know, won't run these. The KSG from Keltec will run these, and you don't need an adapter or anything. That's actually kind of cool. But you just have to figure out if your shotgun is compatible and works reliably with these things or not. Other downside is it's a lot smaller, so you have a smaller payload, which means less buckshot shells, which means fewer buckshot shells, or a smaller, lighter slug if you go with the slug. and you've got less powder, which means this thing is not going to give you as much energy as a normal full-size shotgun shell would. But it is an option, actually possibly a pretty good home defense option based on, you know, over penetration and things like that. It's still definitely going to be lethal, or at least have the capability to be lethal. I would want to get shot at with one. But that's probably the most common specialty shell you can find. They come in a box of, I think, 20. And yeah, I haven't actually shot one of these yet. I need to take a box out and play around with them, see what they do. But that's going to be a video for another day. Anyway, guys, I just kind of wanted to, like I said, make a video for the newer gun owners out there. I know 2020, 2021, people have been buying guns like crazy, and defensive shotguns are a kind of a hot topic, or a hot commodity right now. So if you guys picked up a shotgun and you're trying to learn about different ammo and stuff like that, this was just meant to be a basic primer, if you will, on what the different types of shells are, what their typical applications are, and help you decide what you should load your shotgun with. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to post those down in the comments below, or you can send me an email or a DM on Facebook. I'll have that in the description and here on the screen for you guys as well. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch. It means the world to me that, you know, you guys enjoy my content, and, you know, I hope you learned something. I'm hoping I'm helping with your choices for self-defense. But yeah, really appreciate it, guys. Y'all take it easy, roll tide, and I'll see you later.